You vanish into the pitch black on a late night Walmart run, your screaming children fading into a distant memory. Alone, you stare blankly ahead as one by one, each of your brain cells enters a state of blissful dormancy. Nearly comatose by the time you hit the on-ramp, the toxic waste green glow of your dashboard lights and the sound of a Pat Benatar song they used in a ShamWow commercial in 2004 wafting gently from the speakers are the only sensory inputs maintaining a trace electrical signal in your prefrontal cortex. The exit for Walmart flashes and fades, but your speedometer needle never dips. The highway is long and straight, and so is your gaze. Welcome to the 2005 Lincoln Town Car. Some might say this was a low-effort flop job thrown together from obsolete parts from the 1970s by a failing corporation too concerned with its own mere daily survival to actually pay any real attention to the cars it was putting out. I say, why then? Why is it so damn good? This car was the last of a dying breed, the very, very last of a very obsolete breed known as the traditional body-on-frame sedan. As cars like this were being discontinued decades ago, Ford was actually originally talking about canceling these models for being past their expiration date in 1982. But the Town Car, and the Ford Crown Victoria it's derived from, found themselves in a particular niche where they were the last car standing in a market segment that had just enough oxygen to survive a few more years. Until 2011. Yes, Ford tarted these cars up with some Walmart makeup and some strip mall plastic surgery every few years along the way. But under the rolls of the Town Car's voluptuous body is the skeleton of a 1970s Ford car. And a bog standard run-of-the-mill 1970s Ford car at that. The kind of wheezing, sloppily made behemoth that made American cars the butt of every automotive joke for decades to come. With its solid axle and full ladder frame, this is basically the caveman version of how to build a vehicle. So, why would you do this? Well, I'll tell you the same thing I once told a flustered manager at a Taco Mac when I tried to pass my then teenage self off as 21 and he asked me, why would you do this? Because honestly, man, it usually works pretty well. But as the car market steadily evolved, something happened. Cars changed, in some ways for the better, in some ways for the worst. All the while, Ford took this pig and ran with it. They were modernizing, tweaking, perfecting. And by the mid to early 2000s, they had a car that was at once absurdly out of touch and pretty damn good by any objective measure. You see, the Town Car pioneers a uniquely American genre called fake luxury car. Its doors creak like a clapped-out taxi over railroad tracks, and its engine sounds like an old white rapist van when you gun it. A refined and sophisticated piece of machinery, it is not. But that doesn't stop the Town Car from showing up in preposterously formal attire. The result is a car with all the clumsy grace of a tipsy swan. From Memphis. So here's how Ford made the Town Car out of the Crown Victoria. First, they stretched it 3 inches, so it's bigger inside and it rides smoother. Then they put air springs on the rear axle so the car stays level when loaded and again rides smoother. They stuffed it full of extra insulation, which may or may not be loaded with asbestos. They gave it a few more horsepower using dual exhaust, and some of the materials inside are a step up. These cars have more real leather than a Crown Vic or Grand Marquis. The thin slab of wood across the dashboard is actually real, although you could have fooled me. The seat cushion material itself is better. The felted windshield pillars are a nice touch. They polished it off with a hood ornament, standing triumphantly at the helm like George Washington crossing the Delaware. And finally, they slapped emblems on the side that said stuff like Presidential, Executives, Deluxe, Town Coach, Grand Estates Edition that nobody under the age of 103 would actually fall for. And on the 7th day, Ford rested. The features list proper is actually not that much longer than a Crown Vic's. Both cars came standard with stuff like power windows, doors, seats, automatic transmission, cruise control, tilt wheel, AC, all the typical stuff. The few accessories of the Town Car did actually hold over the Crown Vic were mostly optional. Heated seats, memory seats, wood steering wheel, power trunk lid. This is a Town Car's signature, and while that does sound fancy, that actually just means it's a base model. No heated seats or anything. So, is a fake luxury car a luxury car? I borrowed this car from my cousin for 2 weeks and put over 1,200 miles on it to find out. So first things first, this car is absolutely huge inside, and I love that. Specifically the legroom and footroom. Also the headroom. And additionally the elbow room. These were the last full-width American cars they made. These are almost 80 inches wide like a full-size truck. They are the only sedan I know of that I can comfortably drive with work boots on. The town car bucks modern trends and doesn't waste your time with a center console. The gear shift is on the steering column and you have a 3-passenger bench seat in the front with a big fat fold-down center armrest. Super old school, but there are honestly probably more objective arguments for than against this setup. You could argue that the town car omits some ergonomic attention to detail. For instance, the steering wheel doesn't telescope, so I always felt awkward trying to hang my left elbow. The AC, the radio, and the cup holders are all kind of a reach. The accelerator pedal is jumpy, and the brake pedal, on the other hand, is underboosted, and they're both too close to each other. The highway ride, now that is all you would expect out of a cruiser like this, and then some. It is superb. This is what I call the Big Mac theory. Unlike a modern sedan design where the suspension bolts directly to the body so you feel everything, here the suspension is mounted to a frame, and that frame is then mounted to the body of the car with rubber isolation. So just like a Big Mac, you have an extra layer between you and the road. I actually think it works better here than on the hamburger. This causes the car to feel incredibly robust and isolated. This is one of the main selling points and advantages of this chassis. Speaking of isolation, this car is dead quiet. It is significantly quieter than the Crown Vic and Mercury versions of this chassis thanks to all that extra insulation, and it actually does a pretty good impression of a serious car in this regard, in my humble opinion. Now, when it came time to select an engine to power the town car, the company's foremost and flagship luxury sedan, Ford looked at its comprehensive suite of larger 3-valve and dual overhead cam V8s and said, "Nope. We're gonna throw in the most basic V8 we've got. The same one we use in every base model cop car, fleet vehicle, and work truck, the 2-valve single overhead cam 4.6 liter. And it's accidentally perfect after all. This whole car is basically that meme of Michael Scott getting congratulated while looking like he doesn't know what he did right. I mean, think about it. First off, all of Ford's supposedly better or more advanced V8s of this era turned out to be reliability nightmares in hindsight. This one, the basic engine, escapes all that. And it's still got lots of power due to the basic fact that it's a V8, and any lack of polish that the other engines may have offered is masked by the incredible amount of isolation this car has. Simple, reliable, understressed. I like it. 4-speed automatic? Hell, that's perfect too. I find anything more than that, they spend more time shifting than driving. No thanks. And while the modern car buying public has been trained to believe that V8s are an impractical luxury due to gas mileage, I actually think you'd be surprised just how not bad this car is on gas. In 1,200 miles of mixed but primarily highway driving, I averaged 24.0 miles per gallon. Put another way, it cost me $160 in gas to drive this car 1,200 miles. I found that to be shockingly economical, especially for how big and how powerful this car is. And these cars call for regular gas. As a general rule of thumb, you can expect these to get 25 on the highway. They may only get 15 around town, but honestly, anything worth driving does. It reminds me of a bit of wisdom from my great-grandma, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if a man didn't have enough game to pull side chicks, she didn't want him anyways. But if your wife asks you if a town car gets good mileage, don't tell her that. Just tell her it's a hybrid or something. Another thing you can tell your wife, the Lincoln Town Car was the first production sedan in the world to receive US 5-star crash safety ratings in every category. While we're on the subject of practicality, the trunk on these cars is insane for a sedan. Ford basically dug out the area between the rear frame rails to create this very deep trunk. And the fact that the car just has so much ass to work with doesn't hurt. You can toss full-size Igloo coolers back here with impunity. I mean, the space is on par with most SUVs. My cousin actually told me that at one point he was trying to sell his house, and when the realtor told him to clear out all the clutter, he just took all his stuff and threw it back here for a few weeks. Now talk about a multi-purpose vehicle. Now, you might expect the town car to handle about as well as that ship that hit that bridge that was in the news. You know the one I'm talking about. Sure, under challenging pavement conditions, a true driving snob will not confuse the town car's clumsy footwork for a BMW. And it's a lot to park. But in general, these cars are tight when they turn, they have decent steering wheel, they have good grip, and most interestingly to me, they have incredibly low pitch and dive on braking and acceleration. These cars stay surprisingly flat. This is no accident, because in 2003, Ford actually performed an extensive rework of the suspension on the Crown Victoria and derivatives. Setting aside the market improvement in drive quality itself, think about that for a minute. Ford was originally supposed to cancel this car for being too outdated in 1982. The fact that it kept getting a renewed lease on life over and over again while its parent company was over its shoulder constantly turning over the idea of putting a bullet in its head every couple of years was miracle enough. But the fact that they decided to heavily reinvest in this platform 20 years into its 30-year zombie era, that absolutely floors me. So what happened was in 2003, they threw out the whole front suspension carrier of this car, designed a bizarrely advanced cast aluminum unit in its place, fitted that with a new coilover shock design, and ditched the old recirculating ball steering box for a tight new rack and pinion unit. That's a lot, but that's not all. The entire frame of the car went to fully boxed, hydroformed construction for more stiffness, the rear shock absorber geometry was changed, and shocks at all four corners now used monotube technology. That's honestly crazy. Truly a feat of engineering, a remarkable investment decision on the part of the company, and just a one-of-a-kind story in car history in my very, very nerdy opinion. As a result, these town cars drastically exceed what you might expect in terms of drive quality. So what gives? This car is big. It's comfortable, it's smooth, it's quiet, it's actually really nice inside, it drives really well, it's cheap to own and operate. This is carefree motoring at its best. So why then does my cousin literally hear people locking their doors when he pulls into a parking lot? Why then does he report that people literally refuse to pull up next to him at stoplights? Why then, when he went over to a guy's house, did the guy's neighbors literally call him up scared because they saw a Lincoln Town car in existence? Why then are these all actual stories that actually physically occurred in real life that I'm not even making up or embellishing? Ford updated the cars themselves, but they never updated the business model. As a result, by the early 2000s, these cars found themselves diametrically opposed to the forces of automotive marketing and pop culture. And as a result, a young person driving one of these is identified as either unaware of or actively flouting social norms. In other words, driving a town car is regarded as an antisocial act. And antisocial is really just a lighter synonym for criminal. If the Chevy Monte Carlo is the official car of dads who went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came back, the 05 town car is for the dad who begrudgingly decided to turn around and give family life one more shot after his third puff under the neon glow of the Z-Mart sign. Dumb, crude, and heavier than it needs to be, this is the consummate American car. And like it or not, it's probably a perfect match for you.
It's a nice car to drive around.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Just tell Rachel.